Hello, welcome back to the You at Your Best podcast. I'm your host, Morgan. So, for this week's episode, I wanted to talk about divine feminine energy versus divine masculine energy, specifically in relationships. So, I want to start off by saying that I don't believe that you have to be a man to be divine masculine or a woman to be divine feminine. Honestly, I think whenever people say things like that, there's an entire group of people that are excluded, and I truly think that is just so unfair. I think this kind of stuff should be available for everyone, no matter what they call themselves, no matter what sexuality, gender, whatever it is that they are. They should be able to find whatever it is that works for them. And every single person has a more dominant divine energy, and I know it's divine masculine and divine feminine, but that doesn't necessarily mean female and male. And if I'm being honest, I know a lot of women who feel a lot happier whenever they are more in their divine masculine, and I'm sure there are a lot of men who feel a lot happier whenever they're in their divine feminine, and that's totally okay. But also, people who are more naturally masculine, they need feminine energy too. Everyone needs both. And a lot of the time, we can be really wounded if we push ourselves so far into one that we don't allow the authenticity of the other one to come through. Because we are human beings and we're very complex. There's no way that we can expect ourselves to be one or the other, but all of us do have a more dominant side in one or the other. And for a lot of us in our romantic relationships, we tend to push ourselves towards the opposite of what we actually are. So a lot of the time, women, we will become the quote unquote man of the house. We will be the boss. We will be the one who wears the pants. The man kind of follows us. So a lot of the time in our romantic relationships, we will kind of become the opposite of what we actually are and of what our divine energy is. So a lot of the time, people who are more feminine or feel best whenever they are in their feminine will kind of become masculine. And a lot of the time we do that because we notice that maybe the masculine energy in our life doesn't really pick up the slack. A lot of the time we do it thinking that we are just being forced to, but a lot of the time it was kind of us who chose to do it, because just like the episode, I'm not sure when I'm putting this episode out. It may have been the episode before this or the episode before last week's episode, but how I talked about how our brains work. We naturally notice everything, and a lot of the time men don't really notice those things in the same way. But a lot of the time a relationship can feel very broken because two people are in the energies that are the opposite of what they're divinely pulled to, I guess, if that makes sense. And a lot of the time as women, we will end up kind of becoming like the man or the boss of the house, and we end up being the ones who do everything, like who plan the vacations, do the bills, all kinds of things. And honestly, people who are more divine feminine, our job isn't to do more. Our job is to relax and let the people around us do more. And yeah, of course, we can be masculine sometimes. That's why I have my podcast. I feel like my podcast is more my masculine side of me. And we're very complex, so we can have all of these things. But in general, for our everyday life, in order for us to feel safe, we need to do less and be taken care of more while others do more for us. And a lot of the time we end up in relationships where we are the ones who are doing more, and we can feel so much resentment when in reality it isn't really their fault. It's just kind of the dynamic of our relationship and how it just ended up happening. And if something like that's happening, I truly believe that the relationship doesn't have to end. a lot of people are like, your relationship is over whenever your partner starts letting you do everything. But it's not. A lot of the time, it's literally just a dynamic, and dynamics can change. So in that kind of situation, a lot of the time, the man is the one who ends up being more feminine. Maybe you notice that the guy that you're with complains all the time, or he does less work while you're the one who is being overworked. And because of that, it creates this relationship where neither partner is happy, because both are in roles that aren't really for them and that don't fulfill their souls, I guess, if that makes sense. And a lot of the time, this isn't just one partner's problem. I know in our society today, it's very common for us to blame the other person instead of acknowledging that we have something to do with it as well. This is 100% on both partners in the relationship, and it doesn't mean that it's either of their fault, because most of the time we aren't aware that this is happening. This is kind of what society has taught us to be like here lately, and there's no way that we can expect ourselves to know whenever we're literally only doing what we know, and we're only surviving based off of the information that we've been given, and there's no way that we can blame ourselves for that. So whenever I say that this is on both partners, I'm not saying it's both partners' fault. This is just something that both partners contributed to. And what we need to do more, instead of blaming the other person, because I promise you, blaming the other person is never going to fix the issue. All it's going to do is just create more resentment, more anger, and a really unbalanced relationship. What we need to do instead is focus on ourselves and changing what issues we have. Even if the other person isn't changing themselves, I promise you, if one person changes, both will. You don't have to wait for your partner to change and be better. You can start changing yourself and focusing on yourself and really giving to yourself everything that you need. And your partner will naturally follow behind you. And like I've said a million times, this podcast is called You at Your Best because you're focusing on you. And whenever you are your best, the people around you naturally start to do the same thing. You don't have to wait on everyone else to change. You don't have to wait until you find the perfect guy, because you already found the perfect guy most of the time. And honestly, like, if you have codependency in your relationship, that's a sign that your relationship is actually able to be incredible. It's just the dynamic needs to change. That's why I hate it whenever people say that codependent relationships are toxic, because they aren't. Codependency is a sign of two people who are meant to be together not knowing how to make the relationship work because they weren't ever given the correct information. I truly believe that, and I think we need to stop shaming couples who are trying their hardest. It's like we praise people for whenever they're finally perfect and they're finally in the happiest relationship. But if the relationship isn't perfect, we make them feel so lonely and isolated, and that's not fair. That's not something that we should be doing to people who are already struggling so much. I think we should be spreading awareness and make people realize that it isn't just some lucky people that end up with happy relationships. It's people who understand this, what we're talking about. And yes, there are some relationships where the woman doesn't have to worry about finding her divine feminine energy, and she'll still have a guy that's still really great. And if I'm being completely honest, I think that's only neurotypical men who are like that. I think neurodivergent men need more guidance, and that's okay because I'm neurodivergent and I get it. And being with a neurodivergent man is incredible. Being a neurodivergent person is incredible, and I think we need to really focus on being the best for ourselves, finding authenticity. And I promise you, the more you focus on yourself and the less you focus on fixing your relationship and making your relationship perfect, it will slowly become where your relationship is happy again. And I want you to understand that, of course, there are instances where relationships are toxic and where you find that you're constantly yelling at each other, you're scared. Like, I 100% believe that even those relationships can be fixed, but I totally get it if there is way too much trauma from that relationship that you just can't be in it anymore. But I also want you to understand that you can fix things, and you don't have to force yourself to do things that make you unhappy or even terrify you when you're not ready for it. And I know, like, we live in a society where everyone is saying, like, you have to push yourself, you have to be better. But as a feminine person, you do not have to. What you need more of is calm and relaxation and not overthinking, not worrying, and forcing yourself to think, like, I don't know if I should leave this relationship. And I know we've all been there. Like, even the healthiest relationships, sometimes we question it because we're overthinkers and we can't stop it. It's like, I learned recently that some people don't have an internal monologue. They literally, like, they don't have a voice in their brain that's constantly talking. And I was like, what? There are people who literally all they see is pictures, and they don't have a voice constantly telling them everything that's going on. And I was mind blown by that, because imagine how calming that would be. As a feminine person, that's all I want, is a brain that isn't constantly overthinking everything. And I know that was kind of off topic, but I got reminded of that. But I really wanted to get on here and talk about this, because a lot of us aren't aware of this, and a lot of us will see other relationships and think, like, oh, I'm never going to be able to have that. That woman is perfect, and I see myself and I'm not. And honestly, like, a lot of us will think I'm not good enough to have that. Maybe I've done too much wrong in my life, so I don't deserve it, or anything like that. But I promise you, you truly deserve the relationship of your dreams. And if you're listening to this podcast episode, that means the relationship of your dreams is on its way, even if that's in the same relationship that you're in right now. You do not have to end your relationship to find a good one. I feel like we live in a culture where everyone's like, if it's not perfect, you leave. That's not what a healthy, happy relationship is about. A healthy, happy relationship is about staying together and being on each other's side through all the struggles. Even if there's a little bit of hurt, you still love that person enough that you allow that hurt to push you to be better. And I'm not saying that you pretend that the hurt isn't there, but if you love that person, you do not have to react based off of hurt whenever you're with them. You can talk to other people about it. And I just think it's actually really empowering hearing this. Like, my other episode where I was talking about really relinquishing control in your relationship, I feel like maybe some people would listen to that and think, like, oh, this girl is for the boys, or this girl is on boys' side of things. And that's completely untrue, because truth is, more feminine energy people are the ones who have the power in the relationship. Not to say that the men can't be the ones that change and work on themselves. A lot of the time, the guys or more masculine people all they want is to make their partner happy. And if their partner isn't happy, sometimes they can feel really defeated and like they can't do anything right, and that can really make them kind of give up. But if we're happy with them and we're happy because we're filling our own cups, then they feel like they succeeded, and they continue to try to make you happy because they love seeing you happy. And I truly believe that in relationships, there is always a masculine and a feminine energy. And sometimes, like I said, we will be in the opposite energy of what makes us happiest. And if your relationship feels like there's something off, and you just feel like everyone else's relationship is so much better, and you don't understand why your relationship can't be happy, or why you've tried a million relationships and none of them work out, it could be because you were not in the energy that works for you. And maybe you're expecting your partner to give you more than is okay to expect of them. And if you really want the healthy, happy relationship, you have to start by working on yourself. And I promise you, you can do that while in a relationship. A lot of people believe that you have to be perfectly healed or on your journey of working on yourself before you're in a relationship. A lot of people believe that you can't be in a relationship while you're in the process of bettering yourself, but I promise you, you can. You don't have to end your relationship if you don't want to. And if you want to, by all means, do it. But if you don't want to, and if you truly love this person, you do not have to break up with them in order to find yourself and be better. You can find yourself while you're with them. Yeah, it may take more boundaries. It may take, maybe even it may take more time. But if this relationship is important to you, that's what works with healthy and happy relationships. You work on yourself while you're together. And I can truly say that since I started being more in my feminine, my boyfriend has naturally started to be more in his masculine. And we are not fully there. We still have a long way to go, but we are really getting there. And I'm really seeing, like, I finally just feel so calm and happy and content with my relationship. I'm not worrying. I'm not scared that it isn't perfect or that I don't have the right guy for me, because I know that he's the right guy for me. And I promise you, the person that you chose, it's almost certain that is the right person for you, because you wouldn't have chose them otherwise. And I really think that we, as feminine people, really need to start just really focusing on ourselves and do more for you. Because honestly, if you're so overwhelmed and stressed because you're not taking care of yourself, that's going to show up in your relationship. And you may kind of believe that it's your partner's fault, because a lot of the time we expect our partners to give to us what we should be giving to ourselves. And yeah, of course your partner can take care of you, but you need to take care of yourself first, because no one can make you happy except for you. And the missing piece in your happy relationship is you taking the time to focus on yourself. And I know I talk about self-care in basically every single episode, but that's because every single thing that comes to your happiness always comes back to self-care. Okay, so I know a lot of people, they don't really know which energy is naturally the best one for them, because again, like I said, you can be a woman and still be the happiest in masculine energy. If you don't know which one you are, I totally get it. I've been there. Like, I feel like my whole life I've kind of just felt feminine. Like, I've always loved being a girl, but I know not everyone has that. And sometimes people are just really confused and don't really understand which one is better for them. So I kind of just wanted to share some different traits of each. And these don't necessarily mean that this is how you are right now, because again, you could be in the opposite energy. But these that I share, just think like, which one would I feel the happiest in? And really think about that. Like, if you listen to this episode and you're not sure, maybe just write down some of the things I talk about, or even look them up if you need to do that, if the things that I share don't really help you. And remember, think about what makes you happiest. So people who are more divine feminine, they loved being pleased, and they're more receptive. Like, they love receiving gifts. They love expressing their desires so that people can give to them what they love. And a lot of people think this is selfish, but this is not selfish at all. If it makes you happy, it's never selfish. People with feminine energy usually need more self-care. And then people with masculine energy, they really love pleasing. If you have a partner who you know all they want is to make you happy, that could be a sign that you are more feminine. And then more feminine people, they love being admired, while masculines love admiring. That's why a lot of the time women, we aren't necessarily super turned on whenever we just see our partner naked, but our partner is more turned on whenever they see us naked. A lot of the time we need that more emotional connection to be turned on. And that's a lot of the time because we love being admired and we love that connection, while men, they can be horny in 5 seconds, feels like. And then women are more intuitive and more emotional thinkers, which a lot of people think is bad, but it is not. It's something that's incredible and something that we really need to admire more. Women's intuition is the strongest thing ever, and I think I'm going to make an episode about that, because ever since I've really started to find my intuition and really notice those kinds of things about me, I have really noticed like I am right a lot of the time just through intuition. We are very observant, very intuitive. And more masculine people are kind of more logical and analytical. They're critical thinkers and problem solvers. And I know a lot of the time, whenever you're in a relationship where you're in the opposite, you may hear that and think, oh, the guy that I'm with, he is not logical. He is not a problem solver. I cannot trust him with anything. I promise you, you can. And after all of this is over, after you start focusing on yourself and really finding your feminine energy, you will have a man that is more like that. And like I said before, more feminine souls need to do less. I feel like a lot of us are very sensitive. Like we have a very sensitive nervous system. And that could also just be from me being neurodivergent. A lot of the time I can't tell if the things about me are neurodivergent things or if it's because I'm feminine. But honestly, I really do believe that me being so highly sensitive is a very feminine thing. And I need to do less to feel safe and complete in life. And a lot of the time, more masculine energy people need to do more to feel good. They really enjoy working on things and doing things. That's why a lot of the time, like if you have a guy that it feels like he won't relax, like he just keeps on doing a bunch of things, and you're like, oh my gosh, why is he always doing all this? A lot of the time it's because he needs to do more. And if I'm being honest, like my ADHD kind of brings me more into my masculine. And I can be like that at times too. Sometimes my boyfriend will be like sitting down, watching TV, just relaxing, enjoying his day. And I am just up frantically doing everything. I love doing that. There are times whenever I absolutely enjoy that. And that can be a more masculine side of me, even though I'm more feminine of a person. So just remember that these things are not so black and white. You don't have to be one or the other. You can be both, but I'm just talking more about which one makes you feel the happiest most of the time. A lot of the time, like more feminine energies love to be protected. And I know like in the era that we're living in today, we are very much like, I can do everything myself. I can take care of myself. I don't need a man and all of that. And I think that's admirable, but at the same time, I don't think it's actually authentic for most of us. I think a lot of us are just doing it because we feel like we have to, and we're just saying like, oh, I have to be this way, because you kind of look around and you see that the men of our generation are kind of crap. And I think the reason why a lot of them are crap is the same reason why we are becoming more masculine. And I don't think any of us are at fault for that. But I remember as a little girl, I always loved the idea of being protected and having someone who protects me. And even now I still do. Like it just fills my soul knowing that I am being protected. And I love that about myself. I don't feel like I need to pretend like I don't need that, because I do. And obviously you don't need it to make you happy. If you don't have it, you can still focus on yourself. But the feeling of being protected is so incredible. Like whenever my boyfriend and I are going over to his family's house, and there are certain things that maybe I'm worrying about them doing whenever it comes to our baby, like maybe feeding her foods that babies can't have. I worry about that stuff, and knowing that he'll protect me and he'll stand up for me, that feels so incredible, knowing that I have that. And that's what a lot of more feminine souls need, is that protection. And on the opposite side, more masculine souls, they love protecting. They feel useful and they feel confident in themselves whenever they are able to protect. And more feminine energies are more vulnerable and empathetic, while more masculine energies are more confident and assertive. And again, we can be both. You can be feminine and still be confident and assertive, and you can 100% be masculine and still be vulnerable and empathetic. Okay, and then I have a bunch more, but I think the last one that I want to share is more feminine people need more emotional expression, while more masculine people need to fix issues. That's why a lot of the time in our relationships, we try to talk to our partner about something that we're feeling, and they instantly try to fix it. And that can be really irritating at times, but it's actually really incredible, because we can have our friends to talk to, people who have brains that are more like us. And of course, I think men need to do better at trying to listen to us and understand us emotionally, instead of a lot of the time men are just like, if you don't think logically, then you're wrong, which is annoying. I don't know why some men are like that. Honestly, I've never experienced being around men like that, but I've really heard so many people dealing with that. Like, I don't get it. And I really don't get the culture where people say that women aren't as good as men because they don't think logically, they think more emotionally, even though we can 100% do both. And just because we're expressing our emotions doesn't mean that we don't have that logical information. But a lot of the time, our partner will try to fix the issue. And that can be really irritating at times. But a lot of the time, your partner is doing that because they care and because they really want to make you happy. And like I said, of course, they need to take the time to listen. I think that's so important. But also remember, like, your partner doesn't have the same brain as you most of the time, and it's probably going to be really overwhelming if you're just constantly talking about your emotions so much with them. And of course you should be able to, but also allow them to fix it. Okay, so for me, in my relationship, I've realized that whenever I talk so much about my emotions, and I can kind of see it in his eyes, he kind of just starts like shutting down, and he's trying really hard to be there for me, but he's just exhausted and overwhelmed from all of the emotion and him not being able to logically help me out. And I can see it in his eyes, like, okay, I need to maybe stop oversharing so much. And of course, it's so important for me to be able to do that in my relationship. And I'm not saying that I can't, and I'm not saying that he won't let me, because he will, and he wants me to feel safe and happy. And that's the reason why he lets me do it, even whenever he feels exhausted from it. But sometimes you got to realize that, like, okay, I am verbally processing way too much and it's really overwhelming him and he can't handle it right now. And that's okay. That's normal. Like, I'm sure there have been times where people were verbally processing with you and it was so overwhelming and you just left the conversation feeling drained. And I don't think we want to make our partners feel like that. I don't think we're realizing that that's what's happening. A lot of the time I feel like we take it very personally and we feel like they don't care. But the reality is, if they're sitting there listening, even though it exhausts them, they care to make you happy and they want to love you. But sometimes it can just be really hard and really exhausting. So maybe in that situation, whenever you kind of start seeing that in his eyes where he's just kind of overwhelmed and exhausting, and he may even deny that he's exhausted. I know my boyfriend has a million times. He denies that he is overwhelmed, but I can see it in his eyes. And again, that intuition, female intuition, we know, he denies it because he wants me to be happy and he wants me to be able to talk about it. But truth is, I can tell. So if you start noticing it, maybe just like kind of find a way to end talking, and then maybe you could ask them, like, what would you do in this situation? And they'd literally light up and they'd start helping. Give them the chance to help you because they want to. Don't feel like you have to do everything by yourself, because it's okay to let people help. Okay, I think that's it for this week's episode. So thank you so much for listening. See you next Sunday.